Like, share and subscribe because it is free.
The crystalline spires of the galactic council chamber pierced the void like frozen lightning, their surfaces reflecting the dying light of 1,000 stars. Within the central amphitheater, beings from across the galaxy gathered in their designated atmospheric pods, each breathing different gases, existing at different temperatures, yet united in their shared dominion over lesser species. Council Speaker Zefkar raised a scaled arm, and silence fell across the assembly. His reptilian features bore the confidence of a predator who had never known defeat, yellow eyes scanning the assembled representatives with practiced authority. For 3,000 years, the hegemony had maintained order in this galaxy, and for 3,000 years, that order had never been seriously challenged. Honored delegates. Zefkar's voice resonated through universal translators, reaching every species in their native tongue. We convene today to address a matter of galactic security. Sector designation Sol 3, commonly referred to as Earth, has committed acts of expansion without proper authorization. A holographic display materialized in the chamber center, showing a small yellow star with 9 orbiting bodies. The third planet appeared unremarkable, blue and green swirls of water and vegetation, white clouds drifting across continental masses. It looked peaceful, almost pastoral compared to the industrial complexes and artificial constructs that dominated most civilized worlds. 57 standard years ago, our survey teams classified this world as a Class 3 civilization. Zefkar continued, his claws clicking against the podium. Basic chemical propulsion, tribal conflicts, primitive communications, and a laughably short lifespan of less than 100 rotations. Standard prey species characteristics, emotional decision-making, individual initiative over hive cooperation, and a disturbing tendency toward unnecessary violence among their own kind. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Every species present had evolved beyond such primitive behaviors. The Zephyrians had abandoned individual thought in favor of collective consciousness. The Korthak had engineered aggression out of their genetics millennia ago. The hegemony itself had transcended such chaos through rigid hierarchy and absolute obedience to authority. War Marshal Theclon, Zefkar's military advisor, stepped forward. His massive frame dwarfed even the imposing speaker. 6 arms ending in specialized appendages designed for coordinating fleet movements across multiple tactical displays simultaneously. Unlike Zefkar's predatory grace, Theclon represented the industrial efficiency of the hegemony war machine. Calculated, methodical, unstoppable. The humans have established colonies in 3 neighboring systems without filing proper territorial acquisition forms, Theclon reported, his voice carrying the mechanical precision of someone who viewed warfare as a logistics exercise. Kepler 442b, Proxima Centauri b, and Ross 128b now host human populations numbering in the millions. They constructed these settlements using primitive fusion technology and chemical rockets, a process that should have taken them centuries with their limited capabilities. How long did it actually take them? Asked Counselor Vexhai of the Crystalline Collective, her insectoid features twitching with curiosity. 12 standard years. Silence filled the chamber. Even the most advanced civilizations require decades to properly terraform and colonize new worlds. The humans had accomplished this with technology barely more sophisticated than controlled explosions. Perhaps, suggested Elder Mordak from the Contemplative Order, his ancient voice carrying the weight of 40,000 years of accumulated wisdom, we should examine their methods more closely before taking action. Rapid expansion might indicate hidden technological capabilities. Zefkar's laugh was a harsh bark that echoed off the crystal walls. Hidden capabilities? Elder, our surveillance drones have monitored Earth for over half a century. We've documented their every war, every technological breakthrough, every social development. They fight each other over arbitrary lines drawn on maps. They poison their own atmosphere for economic gain. They cannot even agree on basic mathematical constants. Some groups insist their planet is flat despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. The assembly erupted in chittering, buzzing, and various other sounds that approximated laughter across dozens of species. The idea that such primitives could pose any threat to the galactic order was absurd. Their space vessels leak atmosphere, Theclon added with military disdain. Their weapons still rely on chemical propulsion. Their defensive systems consist of metal plates welded together by individual workers rather than properly grown bioarmor or projected energy shields. We have documented no evidence of faster-than-light communication, gravity manipulation, or even basic molecular assembly technology. Counselor Sly then, representing the merchant guilds, raised a valid concern. If we annihilate them immediately, we lose potential resources. Primitive species often serve useful functions as manual laborers or entertainment. The humans have demonstrated expansion tendencies. Zethkar replied coldly, "If we allow this behavior to continue, other Class 3 civilizations might develop similar ambitions. The galaxy cannot afford such chaos. Order must be maintained." The vote was unanimous, as votes always were in the Galactic Council. Democracy was an illusion. The hegemony had controlled every significant decision for millennia, with other species granted the privilege of agreeing publicly with predetermined outcomes. Theclon accepted his orders with professional satisfaction. In his 3-century military career, he had overseen the integration of 47 worlds into the hegemony. Some had surrendered immediately upon seeing the fleet. Others had required orbital bombardment to convince them of Resistance's futility. A few had actually fought back, providing brief entertainment before their inevitable defeat. The fleet assembled at Staging Area Gamma. 7 represented the largest military force ever deployed against a single world. 500 dreadnoughts, each capable of cracking a planet's crust with sustained bombardment. 2,000 cruisers equipped with the latest plasma cannons and shield disruptors. 50,000 fighters, their pilots eager for combat experience against targets that might actually shoot back for a few minutes before dying. The sheer scale of the force was intentionally excessive. The hegemony wanted to send a message to every species watching. Defiance resulted in overwhelming retaliation. Survival required submission. As the massive fleet prepared for departure, Theclon reviewed the tactical assessments one final time. Earth's orbital defenses consisted of primitive space stations with minimal armament. Their largest military vessels were barely the size of hegemony patrol craft. Intelligence suggested their total space-based military force numbered fewer than 200 vessels, an utterly inadequate defense against what was coming. The humans would see the fleet approaching and surrender immediately. Any species intelligent enough to achieve spaceflight understood the mathematics of overwhelming force. The operation would conclude within hours of arrival, adding Earth to the hegemony's territorial holdings and its population to the ranks of useful servants. Zethkar personally oversaw the fleet's departure, watching as the massive formation activated their hyperdrive systems and vanished into the space between stars. In 3 standard days, the human problem would cease to exist, and galactic order would be preserved. He never noticed the sealed data files marked human anomaly reports that had accumulated in the Council archives over the past 5 decades. Files that documented strange human behaviors that didn't match standard prey species patterns. Files that recorded humans running toward danger instead of away from it. Humans forming protective bonds with completely unrelated species. Humans solving complex problems through individual creativity rather than hive calculation. Files that lay unread, dismissed as irrelevant curiosities by beings who had never encountered an apex predator disguised as prey. The fleet departed for Earth, carrying with it the absolute confidence of the galaxy that had never lost a war against anyone who mattered. In 3 days, they would discover that their perfect record was about to end. The hegemony fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system like a plague of metal locusts, their combined mass casting shadows across distant Pluto's frozen surface. War Marshal Theclon stood on the bridge of his flagship, the inevitable Conquest, watching tactical displays populate with targeting data as his vessels assumed attack formations that had crushed resistance across 1,000 worlds. All ships report ready status, his communications officer announced, voice carrying the satisfaction of a predator cornering wounded prey. Orbital bombardment platforms are charging their primary weapons. Fighter squadrons are launching on schedule. Theclon nodded with professional satisfaction. The humans would detect the fleet within minutes. Their primitive sensor rays couldn't miss something this massive. Then would come the desperate hails for mercy, the offers of unconditional surrender, the pleading transmissions that all species eventually sent when faced with hegemony might. Instead, his communications console chimed with an incoming transmission from Luna, Earth's satellite. The signal was impossibly clear, suggesting communication technology far more sophisticated than intelligence reports had indicated. A human face appeared on the main display, female, with the predatory forward-facing eyes that marked Earth's dominant species. She wore a military uniform of deep blue, insignia indicating high rank, and her expression held something Fechlon had never seen before in the face of overwhelming force. Complete calm. "Hegemony Fleet, this is Admiral Sarah Chun Luna Command," she said, her voice carrying authority that made Fechlon's scales twitch with unexpected unease. "You are in violation of Terran territorial space. State your intentions." Fechlon recovered quickly from his surprise. No species had ever demanded explanations from the hegemony. They begged for mercy or died. Those were the only options. "I am War Marshal Fechlon of the Galactic Hegemony," he replied, allowing his voice to carry the weight of 3 centuries of unopposed conquest. "Your species has committed acts of unauthorized expansion in violation of galactic law. You have 24 standard hours to surrender unconditionally. Compliance will be rewarded with integration into hegemony society as useful servants. Resistance will result in planetary sterilization." The human's expression didn't change. She didn't flinch, didn't show fear, didn't even seem impressed by the massive fleet surrounding her home world. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, as if considering an interesting but ultimately unacceptable business proposal. "We decline," Admiral Chin said simply. "You have 72 hours to withdraw from our system. This is not a negotiation." Fechlon's 6 arms moved in agitation, confusion disrupting his usual military composure. In 3 centuries of warfare, no species had ever refused surrender when faced with overwhelming odds. Mathematical certainty dictated immediate capitulation when survival was impossible. "Admiral Chun," he said, struggling to maintain diplomatic protocol in the face of such unprecedented irrationality, "you appear to misunderstand your situation. My fleet consists of 537 capital ships, 2,043 cruisers, and 51,412 fighters," Chin interrupted, rattling off exact fleet composition that should have been impossible for primitive sensors to determine. "We're quite aware of your numbers, Marshal. The offer stands. 72 hours to withdraw peacefully." The transmission ended, leaving Fechlon staring at a blank screen while his bridge crew exchanged bewildered glances. How had the humans counted his forces so precisely? Their surveillance capabilities were supposed to be limited to basic optical telescopes and radio intercepts. "Sir," his sensor operator reported, mandibles clicking nervously, "we're detecting unusual activity throughout the system. Multiple objects moving from concealed positions near asteroid belts and gas giant rings." Fechlon's tactical display updated, showing dozens of contacts emerging from locations that should have been empty space. The objects move with purpose, taking defensive positions around Earth and its colonies with coordination that suggested advanced tactical computing. "Ship types?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir. They're using some form of stealth technology that's interfering with our sensors. We can track their movements but can't determine their capabilities." On Earth's surface, Chin stood in Luna Command's war room, surrounded by displays showing defensive preparations that had been decades in the making. President Martinez appeared on the primary screen, his face grave as he addressed the assembled world leaders. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chin began, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was about to reveal, "what you're seeing today was always inevitable. We've known since achieving spaceflight that we would eventually encounter other intelligences, and we prepared accordingly." She gestured to a holographic display showing human settlements across multiple star systems. "Our expansion wasn't random exploration. It was strategic positioning. Every colony, every outpost, every research station was placed with one goal: ensuring humanity's survival when this day came." Chancellor Okafor of the African Federation leaned forward. "Admiral, you're talking as if you expected this specific threat." "We did," Chin replied simply. "Humanity represents something unique in galactic terms. While other species evolve as prey animals or develop hive mentalities, we are persistence hunters, apex predators who achieve spaceflight. Our psychologists and xenobiologists have spent 2 centuries modeling potential alien contact scenarios. Every simulation suggested that established galactic powers would view us as a threat requiring elimination. Prime Minister Singh of the Pacific Alliance shook his head in disbelief. "You're saying we've been preparing for galactic war for 200 years? Not war," Chin corrected. "Survival, and if war becomes necessary, victory." The displays around the room shifted, showing technologies that had been developed in absolute secrecy. Gravity manipulation systems that could fold space-time around incoming projectiles. Quantum communication networks that made interception impossible. Stealth technology based on bending electromagnetic radiation around vessel hulls. Project Deep Guard has been running since 2157, Chin continued. Every major power contributed resources, personnel, and research toward a single goal, ensuring that when we met our galactic neighbors, we would meet them as equals, not victims. Back in space, Theclon watched his probe force approach the human defensive line. 100 fighters, the same number that had terrorized the Korthak resistance into submission just 50 years ago. Against primitive human technology, it should have been absurd overkill. The human interceptors that rose to meet them were unlike anything in the hegemony's extensive military databases. Sleek vessels that seemed to bend light around their hulls, moving with impossible grace through 3-dimensional space. Where hegemony fighters follow predictable attack patterns optimized by centuries of tactical doctrine, the human craft moved like living things, each pilot making individual decisions that created chaos from the alien perspective. The engagement lasted 37 seconds. When it ended, 100 hegemony fighters had been reduced to expanding clouds of superheated plasma, while 12 human interceptors continued their patrol routes as if nothing significant had occurred. The human weapons had punched through shields designed to withstand planetary bombardment, their projectiles seeming to ignore the basic laws of physics that govern conventional warfare. Theclon stared at his tactical display in absolute silence. The mathematics were impossible. Superior numbers with proven technology had been annihilated by a handful of vessels using weapons that shouldn't exist. His communications officer broke the stunned quiet. "Sir, incoming transmission from Luna Command." Admiral Chin reappeared on the main screen, her expression unchanged from their first conversation. Behind her, Theclon could see displays showing the complete destruction of his probe force, the tactical data apparently available to the humans in real time despite occurring thousands of kilometers from their planet. "Marshal," Chin said, her voice carrying a note of genuine regret, "you now have 48 hours to withdraw. I strongly suggest you use this time to reconsider your position. We have no desire for unnecessary bloodshed, but we will defend ourselves if forced to do so." The transmission ended, leaving Theclon alone with the terrible realization that everything the hegemony believed about galactic warfare had just been proven catastrophically wrong. 48 hours passed in tense silence before Theclon made the decision that would haunt him for the rest of his considerably shortened life. The humans had demonstrated unexpected capabilities, but mathematics remained absolute. 500 dreadnoughts possessed enough firepower to crack planets. No species, regardless of technological surprises, could withstand such overwhelming force. "All ships, commence planetary bombardment," he ordered, his voice carrying across the fleet through quantum-entangled communication networks. "Target population centers first. Make their deaths quick. We are not monsters." The combined firepower of the hegemony's greatest fleet lands toward Earth in brilliant streams of contained plasma, each beam carrying enough energy to vaporize entire mountain ranges. The barrage that struck Earth's major cities should have ended human civilization in seconds, reducing their homeworld to a molten wasteland incapable of supporting life. Instead, the planet's surface flickered with defensive shields that absorbed the devastating energy like water droplets hitting heated metal. Where the plasma beams struck, they simply disappeared, their destructive force somehow redirected away from the intended targets. The cities remained intact, their inhabitants protected by technology that rendered the galaxy's most powerful weapons utterly ineffective. Theclon watched in growing horror as his tactical displays registered impossible readings. Weapons effectiveness 0%. His gunnery officer reported, voice shaking with disbelief. All bombardment energy is being absorbed or redirected. The planet shows no damage whatsoever. Before Theclon could process this impossibility, Admiral Chen's voice filled every ship in his fleet simultaneously, her transmissions somehow penetrating their most secure communication networks, as if their encryption didn't exist. "You have fired upon civilian populations," Chen announced, her calm tone now carrying an edge of steel that made every alien listener's survival instinct scream warnings. "Terran defense protocols are now active. You will not be offered another opportunity to withdraw." Space around Earth erupted with activity as stealth fields collapsed, revealing the true scope of humanity's preparations. 50 massive vessels materialized from apparent nothingness, their hulls bearing no resemblance to the primitive chemical rockets that hegemony intelligence had catalogued. These were Predator ships, designed by Predator minds, every line and curve optimized for hunting and killing larger prey. The human dreadnoughts moved like living things through three-dimensional space, their courses seemingly random until Theclon realized they were executing packed hunting maneuvers on a stellar scale. Where his fleet maintained rigid formations dictated by millennia of tactical doctrine, the human vessels flowed around each other in complex patterns that created overlapping fields of fire while denying his gunners clear targeting solutions. "All ships, engage at will," Theclon commanded, desperately trying to maintain military composure as his worldview crumbled. "Concentrate fire on their command vessels." The hegemony fleet opened fire with weapons that had conquered a galaxy, plasma cannons and particle beams that could melt continents converging on the approaching human ships. The beams struck their targets and simply stopped, their energy absorbed by defensive systems that shouldn't have been possible with any known technology. Then the humans returned fire. The first human weapons to impact hegemony's shields were gravity bombs, devices that collapsed space-time around their targets, causing enemy vessels to implode from within as their own mass was turned against them. Shields designed to deflect energy beams proved useless against weapons that attacked the fundamental structure of reality itself. 3 hegemony dreadnoughts vanished in the first salvo, crushed to neutron-dense spheres by their own gravitational fields before anyone could comprehend what had happened. The human ships pressed their attack with precision that spoke of careful study of alien weaknesses, each shot placed exactly where it would cause maximum damage to enemy formations. "Impossible," Theclon whispered, watching his invincible fleet die in ways that violated everything he understood about warfare. "How do primitives possess weapons that manipulate gravity?" His answer came from an unexpected source. Human Marines had somehow breached his flagship's hull without triggering any security alerts, moving through passages that should have been impossible to navigate without proper atmospheric equipment. The first Theclon knew of their presence was when his bridge doors opened to admit 12 figures in powered armor that made them appear even more threatening than their natural predatory forms. The lead human removed her helmet, revealing features that were simultaneously familiar from intelligence reports and utterly alien in person. Forward-facing eyes that tracked movement with predatory focus, facial expressions that conveyed complex emotions in ways that hegemony psychology couldn't interpret, and most disturbing of all, a slight smile that suggested she was enjoying this. "War Marshal Theclon," Colonel Martinez said, her voice carrying the same unsettling calm that had characterized all human communications. "I'm Colonel Elena Martinez, Terra Marine Corps. You're under arrest for crimes against sentient beings." Theclon's security detail had drawn their weapons, but found themselves facing humans who moved with impossible speed and coordination. Each Marine seemed to anticipate the other's actions, creating a seamless flow of tactical cooperation that overwhelmed alien defenders trained in individual combat protocols. Within seconds, his bridge crew was disarmed and restrained, their captors demonstrating the disturbing human tendency to use minimum necessary force rather than eliminating defeated enemies outright. "You want to know how we develop gravity manipulation?" Martinez asked, settling into a chair that placed her at eye level with the towering alien commander. "We didn't. We developed it because we knew someone like you would eventually come looking for us." She activated a portable holographic display, showing Earth's history from space. 200 years ago, our scientists detected energy signatures consistent with faster-than-light travel. We knew we weren't alone, and we knew that anyone capable of crossing interstellar distances would have weapons we couldn't match with conventional technology. The display shifted to show massive underground installations, orbital construction facilities hidden within asteroid belts, research stations camouflaged as mining operations. So we prepared. Every human nation contributed to Project Deep Guard. We studied theoretical physics that other species apparently never considered. We developed weapons based on manipulating fundamental forces, rather than simply applying energy more efficiently. Theclon found his voice despite his shock. You spent 2 centuries preparing for a war that might never come? We're persistence hunters, Marshal, Martinez replied, her smile becoming more pronounced. When we identify a threat, we don't ignore it or hope it goes away. We study it, we prepare for it, and when it finally arrives, we're ready. Through the bridge's main viewport, Theclon could see the battle's conclusion. His mighty fleet was being systematically dismantled by human ships that treated galactic warfare like a particularly interesting puzzle to solve. Where alien commanders followed established tactical doctrines, human captains improvised solutions in real time, adapting their strategies to exploit weaknesses that hegemony forces didn't even know they possessed. Your species fights like no other we've encountered, Theclon admitted, his voice hollow with defeat. You coordinate without hive mind connections, adapt without central command authority, and show mercy to defeated enemies. Our tactical computers cannot predict your behavior patterns. That's because you've never fought apex predators before, Martinez explained. Every other species you've conquered evolved as prey animals. They think defensively, reactively, seeking safety in numbers and rigid hierarchies. We think like hunters, proactively, creatively, always looking for the most efficient way to bring down larger prey. The battle ended with 90% of the hegemony fleet destroyed, and the remainder fleeing in panic toward the edge of the system. Human ships pursued the survivors not to destroy them, but to ensure they carried word of what had happened back to the Galactic Council. Earth remained untouched, surrounded by the wreckage of the galaxy's most powerful military force, its inhabitants already returning to their normal activities, as if repelling an invasion was merely another item to check off their daily schedules. 3 months after Battle of Sol, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session for the first time in over a millennium. The crystalline chamber that had witnessed 3,000 years of unquestioned hegemony dominance now buzzed with panic communications from across the galaxy, each report more disturbing than the last. Council Speaker Zethkar stood before the assembly, his once proud bearing diminished by the weight of reports flooding in from every sector. The galaxy that had awakened to news of humanity's existence was no longer the orderly civilization the hegemony had spent eons creating. Honored delegates, Zethkar began, his voice lacking its former authority, we face an unprecedented situation. In the 93 standard days since first contact with the human species, 47 separate civilizations have reported direct human diplomatic contact. 31 have formally requested what the humans term protection agreements from hegemony oversight. Counselor Vexhai of the Crystalline Collective clicked her mandibles in agitation. How is this possible? Our fastest ships require months to travel between distant sectors. Human technology cannot be so advanced that they achieve instantaneous galactic transit. They don't travel faster than us, Zethkar admitted, his scales dulling with shame. They travel smarter. Human fleets emerge simultaneously from concealed positions throughout the galaxy. Intelligence suggests they've been establishing hidden outposts for decades, possibly centuries, positioning themselves for exactly this scenario. The chamber erupted in alarmed chittering and buzzing as delegates realized the implications. The humans hadn't simply defended their homeworld. They had been conducting a covert intelligence operation spanning the entire galaxy while masquerading as a primitive civilization. War Marshal Theclon entered the chamber under heavy guard, his massive frame reduced by defeat and imprisonment. The being who had once commanded fleets across 1,000 worlds now served as living testimony to humanity's military superiority. Zethkar gestured for silence as the disgraced commander approached the speaking platform. War Marshal, Zethkar said formally, provide your assessment of human military capabilities for the Council's consideration. Theclon's voice carried the hollow tone of someone whose fundamental understanding of reality had been shattered. Honored delegates, everything we believe about warfare is obsolete. The humans don't simply possess superior technology. They approach combat with psychological frameworks we cannot comprehend. He activated a holographic display, showing tactical analysis of the soul battle. Human vessels coordinate without centralized command structures, each captain making independent decisions that somehow create coherent strategy. They adapt their tactics in real time, treating established doctrine as suggestions rather than absolute law. Most disturbing, they demonstrate restraint even in total victory, preserving defeated enemies rather than eliminating potential future threats. Elder Mordak leaned forward from his observation pod. You're describing behavior patterns inconsistent with any known predator species. That's because they're not like any predator we've encountered, Theclon replied. Humans form protective bonds with unrelated species, extending their pack-hunting instincts to include beings who share no genetic connection. They see other sapient races not as prey or obstacles, but as potential family members requiring protection. The implication sent waves of unease through species that had spent millennia as either predators or prey in the galactic hierarchy. A predator species that protected rather than consumed was beyond their evolutionary experience. What of our military response capabilities? Demanded General Quarks of the warrior caste. Surely concentrated fleet action from multiple sectors could. 12 warrior species have challenged human forces to honorable combat, Theclon interrupted. All 12 were defeated decisively. The brutal ones of Keth Prime, who had never lost a single engagement in 2,000 years of warfare, surrendered after their entire battle fleet was disabled in 14 minutes. The humans offered medical assistance to their wounded enemies and returned their vessels after removing weapon systems. Zeth-Kar felt the last vestiges of his authority crumbling as the reports continued. The Zephyrian Collective had dissolved their hive mind structure after human philosophers demonstrated the value of individual thought. The merchant guilds were abandoning traditional trade routes in favor of human-protected commerce networks that guaranteed safe passage for all species. Most catastrophically, 47 worlds had declared independence from hegemony control, each citing the same document, something called the Terran Accords, which established principles of galactic governance based on species equality rather than hierarchical dominance. Speaker Zeth-Kar, a new voice interrupted the proceedings, clear and confident despite originating from a simple communication device rather than the elaborate atmospheric pods used by council delegates. Admiral Chin appeared as a holographic projection in the chamber's center, her image somehow more commanding than the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. Behind her, displays showed peaceful human vessels serving as escorts for formerly enslaved species, protecting trade routes that had been abandoned as unprofitable by hegemony corporations. Honored delegates. Chin addressed the assembly with respectful formality that carried undertones of absolute confidence. I bring greetings from the Terran Federation and our allied species. We understand you're experiencing some administrative difficulties. The understatement drew nervous laughter from several delegates. The first time humor had been heard in the council chamber in living memory. The age of galactic empire is ending, Chin continued, her words carrying the weight of inevitability, not through conquest or destruction, but through evolution towards something better. Species across the galaxy are discovering that cooperation produces superior outcomes to domination. Zeth-Kar found his voice despite his shock. Admiral Chun, what do you want from us? Nothing, Chin replied simply. We want something for the galaxy's oppressed species, freedom to determine their own futures. The Terran Accords established frameworks for interspecies cooperation based on mutual benefit, rather than enforced servitude. Any civilization willing to embrace these principles will find humanity willing partners. Those who refuse will discover that the era of unopposed tyranny has ended. The chamber fell silent as delegates processed the implications. The humans weren't demanding tribute, territory, or submission. They were offering something no galactic power had ever provided, protection without the expectation of service in return. What are those who cannot adapt to your new order? Elder Mordak asked, his ancient voice heavy with resignation. The hegemony's leadership will face trial for crimes against sentient beings, Chin stated matter-of-factly. But the hegemony's people will be offered the same opportunities as every other species, the chance to build something better than what came before. Zeth-Kar watched from his holding cell aboard a human prison ship as former hegemony worlds celebrated their liberation. Human vessels patrolled space lanes that had been abandoned to pirates, their crews working alongside beings from dozens of species in displays of cooperation that defied everything he understood about interspecies relations. The galaxy's new motto, transmitted in hundreds of languages across thousands of worlds, summed up humanity's approach to civilization: ad astra per aspera, to the stars through hardship. But the hardship wasn't imposed on others. It was shared burden that made everyone stronger. Through his viewport, Zethkar could see a human destroyer escorting a convoy of refugee ships carrying hegemony civilians to resettlement worlds where they would be given opportunities for peaceful lives free from their species' imperial legacy. The humans treated even their former enemies' people with the same protective instincts they extended to their allies. He finally understood what made humanity truly terrifying to tyrants across the galaxy. They didn't conquer through superior force. They conquered through superior values, inspiring other species to demand better from their leaders and offering protection to those brave enough to seek freedom. The galaxy had gained protectors who saw every sapient being as worth defending, regardless of species, origin, or past allegiances. For beings like Zethkar who had built their identity on dominance over others, this new reality was more devastating than any military defeat. Humanity had won not by becoming better predators, but by redefining what it meant to be strong.